Back again with another honor review, and today we're going to talk about and rant on Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. And yeah, this is not a good movie. I did see this in the theater when it came out back in 2003. It was the summer, and I remember the hype around the film. I remember the marketing. It was a big deal. I was 13 at the time, and just a year before, I had saw Collateral Damage in the theater. And I'm like, okay, Arnold's coming back as the Terminator. This is going to be good. And when it came out, I ate it up. But now it's 18 years later, and when you talk about T3, this is truly the beginning of the end. Because you would have, Salvation came after, but Salvation I can watch as like a time waster. But, what followed, you had Terminator Genesis and Terminator Dark Fate, which I can't wait to talk about those two again. Dark Fate, I already ranted on last year, so I'm going to watch that again. And Genesis. And this is not the worst sequel like I've ever seen. At best, it's a mediocre movie. It's a mediocre sequel. There's some merits, which I'll talk about. There's a little bit of good in here, but for the most part, it's outweighed by just bad direction. Arnold, even at this time, when I was reading like information about the film, Arnold felt at this time he was a little bit too old for the role. So he got, he tried his best to get in that 1991 shape, which, he worked hard and, again, got in shape for the Terminator again, because he knew he had to appear, like in every Terminator film, he appears naked in the beginning. So he had to get back in that form. But Arnold is a joke here. And I'll definitely get more into that. But like I said, at the most, this is a mediocre film. It's a mediocre sequel. But get into the plot here, because there's so much to talk about with this film. Okay, the story. You have John Connor in the film, played by Nick Stahl, and it's been 10 years since the events of T2, and he's living off the grid. And now you have a new villain, the TX, played by Christina Logan. And she's more state of the art, and she's smarter, a more smarter villain. And her character sent back to kill some of John Connor's lieutenants. And then you also throw in this other character in there, this Catherine Brewster, played by Claire Danes, which she's a childhood friend of John Connor. But you find out that, her character, her and John, she would become John's wife in the future. So, Terminator, Arnold, he's sent back. He's reprogrammed, still he's an obsolete model, but, he's sent back to protect John Connor and Catherine Brewster. And, the future is hanging by a thread. And, Skynet is about to be operational. So, like I said, Terminator sent back to protect these two from the TX, and that's kind of the plot here. Now, before I get into the director and the cast and all that, I'll read a little bit of information here. Now, the studios long wanted to make a sequel to the previous Terminator films, but for a long time, Schwarzenegger refused to do it unless James Cameron was directing. Cameron eventually told his friend to just do it and ask for a shitload of money. Schwarzenegger confirmed this in a talk show interview, saying that when he was asked, Cameron told him to take the money and run. Schwarzenegger's fee for reprising his role was $29.25 million, which was a record at that time. His contract was 33 pages long and written by Hollywood super lawyer Jacob A. Bloom. Between June of 2000 and December of 2001, It was written into the contract as a pay-or-play fee, meaning he would get paid whether or not the movie was made. His perk package including a lump sum of 1.5 million for round-the-clock limousines and personal bodyguards. He also insisted on 20% of the gross receipts made by the venture from every market in the world, including movie theaters, videos, DVDs, television licensing, in-flight entertainment, game licensing, and so forth. Once the movie had reached its cash break-even point. Such contingent compensation is not unusual in movie contracts, but in most cases, Hollywood accounting famously uses smoke and mirrors to make sure to define break-even in such a way that a movie never reaches it. Schwarzenegger also could decide who worked with them. The contract pre-approval clause gave him a choice of not only the director, Jonathan Mostow, and the principal cast, but also his hairdresser, his makeup man, his driver, his stand-in, his stunt double, the union publicist, his personal physician, and his cook. The negotiation of this contract did not come cheaply. The legal and accounting budget for the movie was $2 million. By the time all of Schwarzenegger's demands were met, the budget of the film had risen to $187.3 million, making it the most expensive, independently produced movie in history. But, even like I read all that information, the question comes to mind, why didn't James Cameron direct this movie? It's not like he was busy, after making Titanic between 1997 and 2002. What exactly was Cameron doing that he couldn't make this movie? I mean, and plus, Cameron, when Genesis came out, or was it Dark Fate? The guy flip-flops so much. Oh, I like the movie. Oh, I hate the movie. Oh, I like this one, but I hate it now. Make up your mind, James Cameron. But, yeah, I don't understand, why didn't Cameron come back to direct? What exactly was he doing? What exactly, between 1997, 2002, 3, what exactly was Cameron doing? What, in 2003, he was working on that Titanic documentary, Ghost of the Abyss, which was a ego stroke for Cameron. Just another excuse to take a submersible and go down to the Titanic. But anyways, now I know this director, Jonathan Mostow, he directed Breakdown with Kurt Russell. That's Breakdown is a good movie. It's a solid Kurt Russell movie. U-571, I know he also directed. I've seen it before, but I barely remember it. And I know he went on to direct Surrogates with Bruce Willis. But, to me, he wasn't a good choice. He was not a good choice. I mean, if you can't get Cameron, get somebody else. Get somebody better. I'm not saying that Jonathan Mostow is a bad director. But, it's just, directing a Terminator film. And okay, like I said before, there's some merits here, and I'll get into that. But he just was not right for this movie. They should have gotten Cameron or not do it at all. That's an option. Don't do it. If you can't get Cameron, don't do it. And knowing what came after, Genesis, Dark Fate, just further shows how far and how much this franchise, has gone too far. Because Genesis sucked and Dark Fate sucked. And the franchise, the Terminator franchise, should have stopped after T2. The two movies, the first two is all you needed. and I'll talk about. I'll just talk about the cast now. And I could rant. I'll rant more here in a little bit. Um, like I said, Arnold here. Even at this time, Arnold felt he was too old. When he was what, 54? So Arnold felt too old here, and yet he came back for more. But anyways, I mean, when Arnold's okay in the movie, well, I mean, something's wrong from Jump Street because when the Terminator, when he needs clothes, like in every movie, he needs clothes. Where does he go into? A strip club. And then you have a gay, a man stripper on the stage, and give me your clothes. Talk to the hand. I'm like, here we go. That's now we're starting to spiral down. Now we're starting to really go, starting to spiral down, But I mean, Arnold's character here, when he's not cracking jokes, like you would see later on in the film when he's at the gas station, talk to the hand and all that. I give like the movie some of the some decent bits of action, and that's where Arnold is okay. But so Arnold is okay in those scenes, like the highway scene with the crane, the funeral, like the graveyard, carrying the casket around. I like, okay, the cemetery bits, the bits of the cemetery, I don't mind. And there's a little bit towards the end of the film where, he's okay, but the humor is just too much. All that talk to the hand, and then, once he gets the clothes from that stripper, he puts on the star glasses. So Arnold is bad here. Really. Nick Stahl, I know Edward Furlong, they were close to getting Edward Furlong, but because of his substance abuse, he couldn't, they had to let him go. They got Nick Stahl. I don't mind Nick Stahl. I know some people, don't like his performance, but I don't mind Nick Stahl in the movie. I thought he was a decent John Connor. Claire Danes as Catherine Brewster, I didn't mind her in the film. Christina Loken as the TX. Like I said, this Terminator's more, state of the art. She can control machines and all that. And I thought she did fine. I mean, she isn't Robert Patrick. But for what she's given here as a villain, she doesn't have a lot of dialogue. She doesn't overdo it. So I felt for what she did here, she did fine as a villain. So I'll give her credit. You also have David Andrews as the father of Kate Brewster. David Andrews from Graveyard Shift. Yeah, Stephen King's Graveyard Shift. He was in that. Earl Bowen as Dr. Silberman. He comes back for one scene and that's it. But I mean, that's kind of it in regards to the cast. I mean, so I give, the film Nick Stahl, like in terms of casting, Nick Stahl, I thought he was decent. Claire Danes, again, I thought she was decent. I mean, Christina Loken, yeah, she's not Robert Patrick, but I thought she did fine as a villain. She did a good enough job. So I didn't mind her. And she's not bad to look at. I'll just say that. But Arnold is definitely, when the action happens, okay, he's okay. But when you got a lot of the bad moments of humor and the bad jokes and it goes, which The other films would take it too far. That's really taking it far. Having the Terminator smile in a bug shot to the Bad Boys theme. Yeah. I mean, and I'll talk about those when I get to those, but again, this is really the beginning of the end here for Arnold. Now, talking about the action again, there's some decent bits of action here, and that's one of the only few things about this film that has going for it. I mean, the stuff on the highway, where the TX is driving in this big crane, and the Terminator's hanging on, and then the way he takes out the truck, is a really cool shot. You got the stuff at the cemetery, where the Terminator is carrying this big casket full of weapons, and he's firing at the police. I'm like, okay, that's not bad. And, you got some stuff at the end. I mean, the bathroom fight, it was okay, but there was a couple of points where, it got a little bit cartoony. And then the part where, TX kicks off the Terminator's head and it's just sort of dangling. I mean, the CGI is not that great. I understand it's 2003, but, yeah, that didn't look so great. But I will admit, some of the action scenes here, it's not bad. So it's one of the only few things about the film that is good. Now, talking about the ending, which I know, a lot of people talk about, where, spoiler alert, for people, I'm sure a lot of people have seen the film, but, basically by the end, John Connor surrenders to his fate. Judgment Day happens, the inevitable happens, where the bombs fall, and, I didn't mind it. It's a powerful ending. Really, it's hard to believe that, that scene is part of the same movie because I thought, the way that ending was handled, again, it just, people might say, well, it's bleak and what have you, but I like the ending. I mean, like almost, you can almost say this ending deserved a better movie. I mean, like I said, it's hard to believe that, the last 5 minutes of the film is part of the same movie. But yeah, that's what happens. John Connor accepts his fate. The bombs fall. And it's a powerful conclusion. I didn't mind it. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. That the inevitable happens. You can't stop it. But overall, T3 Rise of the Machines, again, I would say at most, it's a mediocre sequel. Yes, there's some merits here. I didn't mind Nick Stahl. I liked Nick Stahl in the film. Claire Danes, I didn't mind her. Christina Loken, I didn't mind her. Yes, like I said before, she's no Robert Patrick, but, I thought she did fine. The bits of action I thought were decent. The score, okay. Some of the practical effects, by Stan Winston, because, he came back to, work on some of the effects, okay. But, Arnold is bad here. And with the talk to the hand and all that stuff, it's horrible. Jonathan Mostow, his direction is mediocre. Breakdown, which he directed, I liked. Kurt Russell movie. Solid movie. I haven't seen Surrogates, but this is a film that, like I said in the beginning, if you cannot get Cameron, don't do it at all. But of course, Arnold took the money and run. So, yeah, I can't blame Arnold for that. I can't get mad at Arnold. He can do whatever he wants. But, this is right before he became governor. And really, it's unfortunate that, for what? For the next 7-8 years, after this film, you know, we didn't get to see much of Arnold. What else he could have done? Maybe he could have redeemed himself, you know, from this movie. You know, which he came back and did The Last Stand. That's a good movie, and I'll be reviewing that next. That's a much better film than this. I really enjoy The Last Stand. But, you know, doing Genesis, doing Dark Fate, and yeah, I can't wait to watch those movies again. But, you know, getting back to this film, I know I'm getting off track and all that. Again, it's just a mediocre sequel, and it's not the worst sequel that's ever been made, or the worst sequel I ever seen, but, you know, it has a couple of good points. That's kind of it. It's poorly directed, poorly executed, and it should have never been made, if you want my honest opinion. So that's my rant and review on T3, the downfall of the franchise. Not Rise of the Machines, the downfall of the franchise. But that's my review and rant on that. Thank you for watching. And up next, The Last Stand. So thank you for watching. Have a good day.